This is Puppets by Arlee. I'm Arlee, and this is how you make a puppet dress for a marionette string puppet. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe. Every time you subscribe, a puppet gets a new dress. This is the entire process, going from draping the pattern all the way to sewing the dress. For my basic puppet dress, start with a bodice. So I have two scraps of random fabric here. And you're going to sandwich your puppet in between your scrap fabric. And take pins and pin around the center. This is called draping. For her hair. And be sure that as you're pinning, that you're not pinning any puckers. Where your seams would go are smooth. And then we're going to true this. We're going to true this pattern, meaning we're going to make it symmetrical. Be sure to check the back. The back is also smooth. Okay. Get a Sharpie and mark where your pins are. You can kind of mark where a seam would go. Drawing a neck here. And draw where the waist would go. Here's the back side. Draw waist. Mark where your pins are. I'm marking center back, center front. Then take out the pins. Okay. Next, cut out these shapes. All right, there's my front and back bodice, but I want to simplify it And I'm going to take the average of all of these, which is truing a pattern. Take a piece of paper. And I like to use a warm color for the front. Trace around. And flip it. Trace the other side. Then take the back. Backs I like to use a cool color. And flip that. So there are my 4 shapes. Next, I'm going to, with a thick Sharpie, to try to keep it straight, I'm going to draw the average between my 2 warm colors. So draw a line in between the 2 of my front bodice tracings. And how you do it, if there's a point, like I have a point of a shoulder here and a point of a shoulder there, I draw the point in between and then draw the line to split the difference between the 2. I can use dark purple for the backs. This is doing the average between the 2 back bodice tracing. And now you can do a front bodice and back bodice, but for me right now, I'm going to do, oops, I'm going to do black and do both of my thick Sharpie lines together in between those 2. And if the 2 lines intersect, you know that that's a place that you can draw your line to. Okay. Now I've marked where the average of all of my lines come together. I like to use 5/8 inch seam allowance, so I have this little ruler that gives a 5/8 inch seam allowance. I put it so my black Sharpie is poking through the windows, and then I can draw the seam allowance underneath. This is nice. It's got curves built into it. And always trying to get in the habit of this. Right away, label your pattern. So this is Mrs. Cratchit. I'll put Mrs. C bodice. And as a last thing, to make it symmetrical, fold it in half and trim the excess. There we are. So with this, I'm gonna cut out one full size, one full front, and then a second one with an extra for the back with an extra 5/8 inch seam allowance included, so that we can take this dress and wrap it around her. Now we need to figure out the skirt. So the waist is 12 inches around. And for a gathered skirt, it's good to do at least twice as much, and maybe 3 times as much, to gather it up, make it nice and poofy. I might make it about maybe 37 inches, 38, 39. We'll see. And then be sure to measure from waist to where you want the skirt to end is 9 inches. And then if I want to add 1 inch hem at the top and 1 inch hem at the bottom, That's 11 inches. So I need to make a skirt rectangle that's 11 inches by let's do 40 inches. 11 inches by 40 inches. So line up your salvages. Get it lined up. Sometimes you can pin them. You know what? Maybe I can use this whole thing. I can just do an 11-inch cut all the way across. There's 11 inches there. So I got 11 inches running along here. All right, there's my skirt. Set that aside. And now if possible, be sure that your pattern is facing the same way as the rest of the garment, although this pattern on the fabric seems pretty symmetrical. So I just use the same pattern again and add on extra 5/8 inch. there's my two backs. And then do one front. There's my front. Now we'll put this fabric aside. We'll cut out the sleeves and any neck stuff later. Just a 5/8 inch rolled hem 2 times. And with my pattern, I guess I want the white dots out and the black dots to be the wrong side. So just eyeballing it here, I'm going to do a 5/8 inch fold over and sew it. Now, actually, first, let's do on the side. Let's fold over. Same thing, 5/8 inch. I don't usually make a true skirt with marionettes because I like to have the tail string come out the back of the skirt. And then let's do the other side. Okay, now we got 3 raw edges stitched in. Now on the bottom hem, let's do that again. So that all the raw edges are inside, and make it nicer. You can do a needle to the side if you have that setting on your machine. Okay, now do the sides. Fold those in. Set that skirt aside. Let's take a look at put your needle back to center. For this, we'll fold under the neck. As best as we can. then fold under the neck on the two back pieces. Always check and make sure that, because my pattern is my fabric's a little confusing here. It would be pretty easy to accidentally mistake the right side for the wrong side. So beware. So let's sew this neck. And before we go and press everything, let's do the side seams real quick. Okay, now we're on the side seams. And last but not least, so this is the front and these are the two back pieces. Now fold those back with an eyeballed 5/8 inch. And the other side. All right, now go and press everything. Press this bodice and press your skirt. I am all pressed. The next thing that has to happen is my bodice has to have this whole gathered skirt sewed to the bottom part of it. And there are a lot of different ways you can do this, but puppet building is always on a crunch. There's always a deadline. So I'm usually most interested in the fastest way to do something. And so this is how I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna sew a casing and then gather the skirt by pulling a string through the casing. So since I happen to have this salvage here, giving me a nice marker, I'm going to sew a casing, meaning a tube. So I have a piece of marionette string longer than my casing here. I've put 2 loops on either side so I don't pull through. I've got a safety pin on one side, and then take a safety pin and start going through the casing. Okay, so now we've got this skirt all on a piece of marionette string. Now, you can gather it down and sew it to the bottom of this bodice, but I find it is faster when you're working just with marionettes, and if you do it with a casing, you can tie this sucker just around the marionette and slip stitch the bodice to it later. So get it nice and gathered. Around the waist. As gathered up as it can be. Then put your marionette down, face down on it, and then have a slit in the back. And go ahead and tie several knots. And always good to put some Duco glue on the knot. It'll keep it from raveling. And you can slip stitch this seam up later. All right. Now, since I'm using the method of just tying the skirt around the bottom of the puppet, take the bottom of your bodice and finish the edge by folding it up 5/8 inch and sewing it and pressing it. and press that. We are pressed. So now let's put it on our puppet. Now, of course, you're going to want to overlay bodice over the top part of the skirt. So just start pinning it down. Then go to the top here and set the neck up and fold back for the top shoulder seam. It definitely takes a few tries to try to get everything smooth and fitting. Okay, I guess I like that. Now we do a slip stitch all the way around the bottom and do slip stitches at the top of the shoulders. I guess I do my shoulders first. Oh, and we'll also do a slip stitch down the back. One shoulder done. Now just slip stitch the back, the other shoulder, and all the way around the bottom. All the way around the waist. All right, now we do sleeves. So take your puppet, measure where the top of the sleeve should go, all the way to where the sleeve should end. And for this, mine is about 7.5. And then measure how big you want the sleeve to be, the cuff. And this feels like 5 1/4. So for me, 7.5 and 5 1/4. This is some random scrap fabric that I've been using for patterning. You can use paper too. Okay. So draw a 7.5 line. And then let's see, what's half of 5 1/4? Half of 5 1/4 is 2.5, and a little more. So let's see, I'll do 2 5/8 inch on one side and 2 5/8 inch on the other side. So you draw a T shape. This is your cuff, and this is the length of your sleeve. Now, the top of my sleeve, I want this to be a large puffy sleeve. So we will extend I have a curved ruler here. So I have an extension here that we can gather in. And me, I'm just eyeballing it. We will be sure it's symmetrical in a second. And add 5/8 inch seam allowance all the way around. And cut this out. And fold it in half. And off the side. All right, and there is our dress sleeve pattern. And oh yes, I wanted to be sure to always label now. Get your fabric. And on grain, get 2 layers. Cut that out. And here we have our 2 pieces. Now, remember, the right side of my fabric is the one with the white donuts out. So the wrong side of my fabric is the one with the black donuts out. Start off with an eyeball of 5/8 inch. Oops. Now press these. Once you're all pressed, the next thing that's going to happen is you're going to sew basting along the top of your sleeve cap, and then we're going to gather it. Set your machine to the longest stitch length. Then be sure that you have kind of long tails, and you're going to baste along the top of this sleeve cap, and do not put a knot in. Then pull out one. So we have nice long tails to pull from. Do that on the other side. Now we have our 2 sleeves that have basting along the top. And you're going to pull one thread. Decide on whether you want to do the thread going along the right side or the thread going along the wrong side. And if you want to gather from the other side, pick the thread that's on the right side of the fabric, since that's what I'm doing. And do that on both sides. And get them so they're about the same length of gathering. And stay stitch them in place. Then take your sleeves and sew the tube. So we're going to do the seam down the length of the sleeve now. We can trim all these extra threads and leave a hole that's big enough on the sleeve that your puppet hand can get through. All right, we're pinned. Now press these seams. Since puppet sleeves are so small, I use a point presser, which has various shapes for pressing on. I need a little steam in my steam iron. Get your puppet. Take a plastic bag, a little plastic bag, put it over the hand, take one sleeve, and slide it on. And do that on the other side. Oops. Next, we pin it on. Now we're going to slip stitch this all together onto the dress. So your first frame of reference is to line up the underside of the seam on the sleeve with the side seam on the bodice. And just kind of pin that on. And there is a hole on the underside of this sleeve because I want to make a hole big enough for the hand. So we will have to stitch that up, of course. And folding the raw edges of the gathering inside. Pin the sleeve to the bodice. And this always for me is a process of smoothing and adjusting. And there we have it. That's the final dress. You could stop there, but there's a few more details that I want to add. And I wanted to do a gathered sleeve. Now, if you were planning to do this beforehand, you would probably make a casing and string your, you'd make a casing and string elastic through it. But I'm just going to take some heavy duty black thread here. And then on the inside, put a big knot at the end. And then I'm just going to do a running stitch around the sleeve, and we're talking kind of big stitches here. And end your basting stitch on the inside where you started. And then get your sleeve and your arm oriented correctly. And then pull your sleeve tight over your wrist. And then with this thread, do several knots to hold it tight. And put a little glue or fray check on that knot. I'm using Duco. Same thing on this side. Go through the underside so our end knot will be hidden inside. And take some pretty big running stitches. Your sleeve and arm and hand oriented correctly, and pull it tight and tie several knots. Now, marionettes often have an open neck that you can see. So, for costuming, you always want to try to hide the open neck. So, I got some lace here, and we're going to do kind of a ruffled collar around her neck. So, I'm going to take a yard-ish of lace, Then I have some heavy duty white thread here. Then do some big basting along one side of the lace. Then take your lace, be sure it's not flipped over, and we're going to tie it around the neck, kind of loosely. Line it up with the edge of the neck hole on the torso. And tie it on in the back. And you can put some glue on that knot. Now pin this lace down in place. And we'll stitch it down so that it's doing its job of blocking the view of the neck joint, but also not blocking the face. And go ahead and tack stitch that down. And there you have it. That's how to make a puppet dress from draping all the way to sewing. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe.